Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. So this is part 2 of our 2-part series where we sit down with John Carroll, Maine native, Maine outdoorsman, and National Park Ranger, and discuss some of the finer details of deer camp, the important traditional implications that are involved, a lot of the overlapping variables involved with many deer camps, and then just share some deer hunting stories and have a good time. We had some great conversation with John, so enjoy. There's a lot of deer around the house.
Yeah,
I just shoot a deer right out back here. And Lacey, my wife, she kind of has a hard time understanding. She's like, why do you want to go way up there? And she's like, you go back here and shoot a deer, no problem. I'm like, oh, it's way more to it than just shooting a deer out back. I mean, what do? I go back, shoot a deer, drag it to the house.
Yeah.
And then that's it. It's over.
That video, was that the same video when the buck swum on you? That you looked to your left and there was a spike horn right there, and you let him walk.
Yeah.
I'd last year.
Yeah.
Last year.
I'd gone all day long and I was in a crap hole.
That was a tangle in there.
It was. And I should have got the buck earlier in the day. And I was coming back out and I was like, well, I'm like, where the heck did this deer go? Because he angled into the lake. And I had gone so far up the shore on both sides, and I could not see where he came. I'm running out of daylight. And I'd kind of gone back to where I had started, where that deer had come down to the lake. And I was like, well, I'll kind of close this out and show my plan, explain my plan, what I'm going to do next. And geez, I turned around and there was a blowdown. And actually, if you back up in the video a little bit when I'm talking, you can see the deer through the woods. They're kind of filtering along through the woods. And then, I mean, it was windy. They didn't know I was right there. And I think there was a doe in front first. And maybe it was a spike horn. And he came around that blowdown. His head comes, he looks at me. And I was like, oh, he's a spike horn. And of course, the does take off. He makes a few bounds right out there and stands there broadside.
John, I'd have shot it.
So
He goes, why?
I'd have shot it. And then I would have got Paul and said, Paul, I got a deer to drag out.
And I kept thinking Lacey's going to kill me because she loves deer meat.
Yeah.
And that's her whole thing.
I do too.
And when she's like, you didn't shoot that spike horn? She's like, that would have filled the freezer. I'm like, I worked too hard all day long.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate too. So I told you that story. My dad and I killed that bear, and I consider we did that together. And I've been part of. I've killed deer with my cousin David, who's now gone. I've killed deer with my cousin Michael. I've killed deer with my brother. My brother, that spike horn we got last year, that was he and I together.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun.
It is.
When there's two people.
And it was last year's buck. That was just a little spike horn, but he and Bernie Tate, another friend of ours, Bernie grew up with us, played ball with us, one of our closest and dearest friends. We were just breaking through. There was some mixed green growth and hardwoods, and broke out on the edge of an old skid trail. And I looked to my right, and there's an adult buck in that skid trail on the move, moving steady, but the deer didn't know I was there.
Yep.
But before I could step out to get clear and get my rifle up, the deer had stepped out of the skid road and in behind a cut top, and I couldn't see the deer.
Oh, jeez.
So I looked to my right, and I didn't know how far my brother was away from me because he was quite a ways down, and I was going to try and get his attention, but I couldn't see him. So I grabbed my little grunt tube, and I started grunting, and after a few grunts, that spike horn is what came back out.
No kidding.
So there were multiple deer there, which I didn't know. So I kept grunting, and I changed my angle and up with my 760-35, and I shot the deer. And the deer jumped about 8 feet in the air and kicked his hindquarters up and bounded, and I threw another one at him and missed. And then I looked to my right to try and get my brother's attention because obviously he heard me shoot. And Jay was back up close to me, and he's got his rifle up and he's aiming at something, and he touched off. And I'm like, what are you shooting at? And then he fired again like that. And he said, I just shot a buck that was standing over there.
No kidding.
And I said, holy cow. I said, I think we're into some deer right here. And then Bernie is coming down and coming down from the top of the ridge. So we went over, and the only deer there was that spike horn.
No kidding.
And I had shot the deer back, and my brother didn't know it was the same deer and shot it right in the throat.
Oh, man.
And dropped the deer. And so we tagged it and field dressed it, and after a little while, we were able to sort out. Yeah, there were 4 or 5 deer that had come through there.
No kidding.
And we never did get the big buck that was there.
Yeah.
But
It's
it wasn't a 200-pound buck, but it was probably
mature buck, probably.
It was a mature buck, and that's another thing, because I like on your podcast and your videos, you do talk about a lot of statistical things. I think our average deer is probably 180
Okay.
ish.
Yep.
We've certainly killed some small deer in the past.
That's good.
But 180.
You're talking about your camp average.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good.
8,
Yeah.
9 pointers.
Yeah.
And normally the racks aren't big. They're low tined
Yep.
and they're kind of
That,
wide.
that kind of seems to be a main thing anyway.
I think it is a main thing. I don't think to see that. You go,
that was
wow.
kind of unique. But you see like a lot of big bodied deer, like
Right.
260.
They don't
and
have the
they've got
racks to match it.
they've
No,
got
that's common in Maine.
nothing
Yeah.
for a rack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
a
other
lot of times
thing,
a 180-pound buck
Yeah.
is
Rick Labby was
Whoa.
talking about
Good.
that in the podcast, and
Giant
he's shot a lot of 200-pound deer, and he said there tends to be just an 8, just a
yeah.
small 8-point rack, nothing
Yeah.
special,
the other thing we have also learned over the last 45 years is we normally kill our deer between 10 and 2.
Okay. Yeah.
10 a.m. and
Yep.
2 p.m.
Yeah.
is when we have
Yeah.
killed the most deer.
Yeah.
I think that stands to reason with nothing first thing in the morning and
Yeah.
nothing.
It
And I don't know for us if it's because we're probably spending most of our time
In the right.
Chasing
we're always-
that
yeah.
point-
walking,
Yeah.
following tracks, sorting things out.
But yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever shot one first thing in
Yeah.
the morning.
You know,
or right before
I
dark.
told you that story of the 2001 year. Michael killed that buck. His first deer of the trip, he killed it within a half hour. That
Yeah,
was
that's-
7:30 in the morning
Wow.
when he
Yeah.
shot that buck. So we have had that happen, but over our time of
Yeah.
hunting up at camp, we have figured out
Yeah.
that we normally,
Yeah.
no one will
Yeah.
be at camp between 10 and 2.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
will be out
lesson
hunting.
there, exactly. Lesson there is stay in the woods.
Correct. We
So you
don't
stay in
come
the
back
woods.
and sit down and have
do
lunch,
not,
at noon.
We do not either. We stay in the woods and hunt.
Yeah.
People might be changing locations and stop at camp and grab
Yeah.
something and then keep going,
Yeah.
but they are not sitting down and having.
Do you guys have a
lunch.
day of the week that was? Of course, you're up there for multiple weeks. But
We
do you
are.
do you have a day of the week that's most productive for you guys? Or
I don't know if we've ever figured that out.
See what-
To be honest,
We were always from Thanksgiving on.
yeah, and that stands to reason because you've put
Yeah.
in
Yeah. We were always
a lot of time to figure
over it.
things
And I
out.
can remember as a young man, way back in the day, 40 years ago, when we really started getting into hunting, we seldom shot a deer before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
It was generally from Thanksgiving on that we would shoot a deer.
Thanksgiving's been a
Yeah.
good day.
Yeah.
so you guys, that's intriguing to me because you're really kind of pushing the wire
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
maybe that
because the
has something to do
season
with it. too.
ends
We
the
push
Saturday
our,
after Thanksgiving.
Saturday after Thanksgiving.
is the end of firearm season.
Yeah.
I mean rifle season.
Saturday after.
Shot a bunch of
Saturday
deer on the
after
last day.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, a lot of deer at the last day. A lot of deer.
And you think getting up in the morning, you've been hunting 6 days now, or 5 days. This is your 6th day out. And you're thinking, well, it hasn't happened in 5 days. What are the odds of, I don't know, it sometimes just comes together.
Now,
So-
we talk a lot about deer hunting, John, and I have a disclaimer. I'm by no means a good deer hunter. There's so many people that
So
are.
I would tell you right now, I would love to spend a day following
Yeah.
you around.
Yeah.
No.
And
they're good.
I have told Paul in multiple emails, he is very lucky to
Yeah.
still have his dad to go hunt with.
Yeah.
And
We love to do it.
And that he still
and
does
I'm not
it.
going to speak
Yeah.
for Paul, but
lot of guys-
we love to do it. And probably nobody loves it any more than we do, but I'm by no means a great deer hunter.
I bet you guys
enjoy,
are good. I bet I could
No,
learn some stuff
just-
from you.
Yeah, I just enjoy doing it and stuff. And
There was one, and I always wanted to talk about this for the longest time. And we did a kind of a podcast on it or a video on it. Like a lot of the really good deer hunters that no one will ever know about. And I've worked in Ashland now for 10 years. A lot of old guys in Ashland. And
And they know
this
how
is
to-
a unique
they know how to
situation.
hunt. They've shot a lot of deer.
They know I like to hunt.
Yeah.
And they will come in, they filter into that store. They have no business there. They just want to come in and talk about, and the stories they have and the deer that they've shot. It's like, oh my word. It's insane. There's a bunch of 80, there's one guy, 82. He still shoots a deer every year.
That
Yeah.
is awesome.
So I sit there and I think all these guys, and I'm like, no one will ever know about these guys.
Yeah.
But you know, that is another thing that this is a personal feeling for me that I like about our state, because we don't have a lot of folks that are bragging.
No.
There's a lot, like you say, and Paul said, there's a lot of really good deer hunters.
Oh yeah, there are.
You never hear about.
I grew up just like you guys. I have all the Benoit books. I have most of the Benoit videos.
Yeah.
I have Hal Blood's books.
Yeah.
I have the R.G. Bernier
Yeah.
books.
Oh, yeah. Richard Bernier.
I enjoy reading those.
And I have a lot of books because I like books and I like to read. So
Same here.
Did you ever read Ridge Runner by Gerald Averill?
Yes, I got it.
That is one of my favorites, telling about his life growing up in Winterport or whatever the town was, and then working for the paper company and living up in the woods at a real logging camp, and then eventually becoming a game warden.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to read that one.
I haven't read that one. Some of the other stuff that hooked me on this when I was a kid. Again, my dad was a warden, but I collected all the Lou Dietz books. Jeff White.
I got them.
I have the complete set. And that took
Edmund
me
Ware Smith.
Yep.
Edmund Ware Smith. Lou Dietz. I've got Lou Dietz. Paul, in the camp that we stayed at, had a drawing. Remember that drawing?
Yeah.
That was done by Lou Dietz.
It was.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And so
They're pencil drawings.
I have gathered all this stuff, but I think you were absolutely spot on that there are some phenomenal outdoors people in the state of Maine, and they just do their own thing. And keep to themselves.
A lot of them are gone. I had one I talked about. Pat Gagne from Prescal had a camp at Cross Lake, an unreal hunter. And you know, those guys, he didn't save the racks or anything.
No.
And he's long gone, Pat, but what an outdoorsman and a fisherman too. Fisherman, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He lived it.
Yeah.
I wish he was here. I'd love to pick his brain.
I read those books, you know, again, Gerald Averill and being in the logging camp back then. And of course, Lou Dietz. The Jeff White stories were fictional, and they were written for young kids to read. Yeah. But I asked my dad, I said, Dad, when you were a game warden in the 60s up at Clayton Lake, was logging still really going on hot and heavy the old way back then? And he said that he and Charlie Davis, there was a set of camps back then, and they'd go in every now and then and eat at the logging camp. And he said
my dad did the same thing.
Food was unbelievable.
No kidding.
And he said the other odd things was he remembered was they ate an awful lot of turnip.
Really?
And they would put lard into the soup.
Yeah.
In the winter.
My dad did the same thing.
Yeah.
He was an insurance adjuster and the woods industry, and he did mainly work comp. And the woods industry was a very dangerous occupation, a lot of injuries and stuff. So he would go into the woods a lot to get the report or whatever on somebody being injured. And he would tell me he would stop into these logging camps like that, and you pay just a very little money, and you'd have a meal. Yeah. And like you said, a fantastic meal.
My father said it was exceptionally good food.
Yes.
Homemade bread and desserts and
hard
and
work.
whatever the main course was good food, and there was plenty of it.
Right. They needed a lot of calories. They were hard workers, and they needed a lot of calories, so they didn't skimp on the food and stuff. And
now, one book that always hit home for me, and it was because the camp that we hunted out of, she lived there, was Helen Hamlin's 9 Mile Bridge.
9 Mile Bridge.
She was a school teacher in Churchill Dam. Yeah.
I got a first edition autographed copy of the book. First edition, yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And her second, but she had a sister book,
Pines,
Potatoes, and People there.
Yeah. So back again in the 90s, I'm going way back now, but I was working in Holton, and my father was in camp already. My uncle was there, and some other wardens, and I couldn't get in because I was working, but my days off came, and you know how that is. Sometimes you got to wait until you get days off, and then you go. Got into camp that next day. I left early that next morning. That was my first day off, and got into camp at about 11:30. during the week. My days off were in the middle of the week,
Yep.
work week. And there was snow and, fresh buck track going across the road. And I looked to the left down in the ditch, and the track was so fresh, he'd stepped into the ditch, and the water was still spreading out on the ice in the ditch.
Geez.
So I shut my truck off and jumped out and grabbed my 270, and I said, boy, this deer, the river is right there. I know it's right there. I haven't been down in this piece,
Right.
but I said,
Right.
I'm going to follow this a little bit. So I started poking in there, and it was thick at first, but then it opened up. Open green growth.
Yep.
A lot of sphagnum moss on the ground.
More mature
and,
forest.
And
yeah.
so you're looking, and the track continues to go, and I can see down through the trees the water, the river, the St.
Jeez.
John River. And I look to my right, and there's a set of antlers
Oh,
laid down behind a log on the ground. And that deer wasn't 15 feet from me. I turned to my right and shot that buck laying there.
Wow.
And I shot him, and he died. He dug up some ground and, drug himself about 6 feet, and he was done.
That was it.
That buck dressed out 225.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a
Wow.
big deer.
That was a
late in the
nice
year. Was
buck.
that?
That was in the middle of November.
Okay.
Yeah. Still before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
my father
big
always wanted to be home for Thanksgiving. Boy, there are some big ones up in that country.
There certainly
Few-
is.
few and far
Maine,
between.
yeah.
They're sparse, yeah, but boy, they get big up there. Even where we hunt, Paul, that I shot a yearling there a few years ago.
Oh, that was
And
insane.
they pulled a tooth out of it. 175 pounds, a yearling buck. 107, dressed weight, fully dressed.
Year and a half old.
That has some good genetics.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
standing
Can you
beside
imagine that
it.
if it had lived to 4.5, 5.5 years
That'd
old?
have been a 300-pound.
That was just
yeah.
its frame was
Big,
huge.
Big body.
Just-
Yeah, yeah. And so where I registered the deer, they pulled a tooth, and I got the information in a card in the mail, and it was a year and a half old.
So, John, you're home until
November 12th.
November 12th. So you'll stay at camp from.
We're going in the 28th, this Friday.
Okay.
And we got 2 weeks planned. So we'll come out the Saturday before I go jump on a plane back to Alaska.
That's going to be a hard trip
It is.
to fly back to.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But it is a family tradition. And the other great thing about it, and it's probably the same for you, is my mother is 83, and she still gets fired up about it.
Does she really?
And she's going to be baking squares for us and, to take to camp. And,
That's good.
everybody's chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom's 89, and she loves to hear our stories
Yeah.
because, well, we were raised doing it. And she knows that a lot of that is our connection with Paul's grandfather, my father, that's why we do it,
Yeah.
because he spent the time, and
We still use a lot of the same gear.
I
for crying
still
out
wear
loud.
his vest.
Yeah.
honey.
He's got a
And-
Filson vest
Yeah.
from
Yeah, I still wear
It
his
must be the
vest,
60s
and I
or-
think about that stuff. And when you get to camp, you still see your father there.
You better believe it.
and your
I think
grandfather.
that's awesome
Yeah.
you say that because I asked my dad one time, I'd come back to camp in the afternoon. He was sitting there at the kitchen table, the camp table, looking out the window at the river.
Yeah.
And I said, Dad, I know you like to hunt. I said, but you always just want to sit here at camp. I said,
Yeah.
don't you want to get out? And I said, aren't you bored sitting here by yourself? And he said, John Wesley, I like to sit right here and think about my father.
Oh, Jesus, bro.
This camp that we have now was my father's passion.
Yeah.
It was his passion. He lived for that.
Yeah.
So many people bought camps back in the day. They thought it was looked like a good idea, and they owned them for a year or two, and they found out it was a lot of work, and they'd sell them. My father used his camp. He was there from the time the snow left until
Yeah.
November.
The other thing with my dad was every once in a while he would get a little fire going or whatever. And so a little different story. Again, everybody who loves to hunt, we have our passions about our guns.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike Carroll, our cousin, who is a tracker, that is his passion. He likes to run them. Michael did forever, and he just recently passed it on to his son. but he carried a Remington Model 14, 35 Remington pump. And he did that. His grandfather, my grandfather's brother, my grandfather was a mason. Uncle Phil was the pharmacist. And Uncle Charles, Michael's grandfather, owned a heating oil company.
Okay.
Heating oil coal, Walls Coal Company in Southwest Harbor. And Uncle Charles was an avid outdoorsman. He trapped bear. He salmon fished. He was a legend on the Penobscot River and the salmon pools. He was a deer killing machine in the old days. As a matter of fact, my grandfather told me a story that when he was in school, he had to go to his mother and borrow money to get a suit for some sort of an event at school. And she said, "Absolutely, Charles, here's the money. You give me your rifle." Because he killed deer all the time and she wanted him to take a break. Yeah. Anyway, he could have the rifle back when he paid that loan back to her.
I bet he paid it back.
My grandfather said he worked like a dog and get that thing paid back. But my point to this was Uncle Charles always told his kids the best deer killing cartridge was 35 Remington. So Michael and all of his siblings and cousins
used 35 Remingtons.
They used 35 Remingtons. We like to poke fun with one another, and my father was at camp, and I think Michael started poking fun at my father about, "Geez, Jimmy, why don't you go out and shoot a deer, you know, blah, blah, blah." And my father said, "All right, I'll do it." He said, "I'm going to take your rifle, though." And he said, "When I kill the deer, though, you have to give the rifle to me." Oh, and Michael goes, "Okay, no problem."
Oh, my word.
My father went up the road, sat down. I'm not joking. My father was a smoker, which is not good. My father sat down.
My dad was a smoker.
My father lit a cigarette, and a spike horn comes out and starts fooling around the road. My father watched it and didn't shoot it. The deer went back in the woods. 10 minutes later, the deer comes out again. My father killed that spike horn with Michael's rifle. Yeah. Flung that thing in the truck, and literally, they tell the story. They say 45 minutes later, he was back at camp, and Mike Carroll was sweating, thinking he just
going to keep his rifle.
Did he get it back?
Oh, yeah. He got it back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But my father teased him.
I hope he played it up a little bit.
Oh, he played it up. But that little buck, I think, was 117 pounds, spike horn, and we had some other deer hanging. That was the best buck of the trip.
That's the best story.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we talk about this like that we have familiar stories, which we do, but those stories, that's a very common thing in Maine, what we're talking about. There's a lot of people that can relate to what we're talking about, that were raised from when they were young boys, going to deer camp and stuff, and looking forward to the day they could go with their father or grandfather or whatever to deer camp and still look forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not we're not telling a strange story here.
No.
It's a pretty common.
Well, I think it's becoming less common.
Yes, it is.
A lot less common.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were talking about that because now it's fun for me to see my brother. And he and I are the same age. I'm 14 months older.
That's basically.
My brother is so enthused right now because Thursday his son is coming home to go to camp with us.
Yeah.
And he is wound up about that.
I
and
bet
he is hoping that Jimmy is going to have a great trip.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine that he wouldn't have a great trip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just being together with the guys, the laughs, the good times and stuff.
Well, like Paul kind of inspired Jay, and Jay invested and bought a new over and under 28 gauge, a Fausti.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a nice one.
Yeah.
A really nice shotgun. And so he's going to have Jimmy. He goes, "There are no birds this year. I'm so bummed out." He goes, "I've got to have Jimmy shoot some birds." He's trying to get him
You'll
hooked.
get some. You'll get some. It just won't be. It won't be easy. It won't. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's probably not going to be easy, but there'll be birds up there.
Yeah.
There'll be birds up there. There'll be birds to kill.
Yeah. And if we do get into the deer, which is, that's just again icing.
Yeah.
That'll be icing.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun to be at camp. Like I said, we eat good. We always have an adult beverage at night, and then we get up and we go at it, and we hunt hard. And on Sundays, we do our chores hard. We cut a lot of firewood. We process a lot of wood. We take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. In our camp, my brother is primary, Harold Hubner, him, we get done dinner at night. The dishes are washed. The coffee pot is made and sitting on the stove, ready to turn on. The camp is vacuumed and cleaned, and everything is spick and span. And when you wake up in the morning, that just Wid will be up at 4:30 in the morning, and he'll make everybody breakfast.
Oh, jeez.
And,
Yeah.
you just love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing.
There's a famous saying there, William Faulkner there. I get up and say it once in a while. It's when the first guy gets up, it's daylight in the swamp. I don't know if you're a reader or not. He was a Pulitzer Prize author there. He was a deer hunter. That was one of his sayings. It's daylight in the swamp.
Yeah.
Time to get up.
Yep.
Yeah. But I have that passion you're talking about, books. I'm always ordering anything I can get on outdoors in Maine, whether it be fly fishing or hunting or history or whatever. I've bought them all.
Yeah, I do the same thing, Mark.
Yeah. Tom Hennessy and Bud Lovett, and
Yep.
there was a famous guy.
I've got a Tom Hennessy painting.
Yeah. There's a famous guy that he's been Gene Letourneau. He was a writer for the newspapers.
Yeah, and used to go to the camp at Ross Lake.
Yeah, Gene Letourneau.
Yeah.
Lived down in Waterville area. So I
What was the paper? What was the Portland Press Herald? Who owned that? What company was that, gentlemen? It's right on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know. Gene.
The paper owned a big camp on Ross Lake, and Gene used to go to that camp all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah. I got his. I don't think he wrote a lot of books. I'm trying to think. He wrote Sportsmen Say. When it first came out, I got that book, Sportsmen Say.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. So I have a passion for reading, for books and stuff, and so yeah.
Yeah, I love all that stuff too. And do you guys remember when you were doing the stuff in the Clayton area? Just west of Clayton, there was a little low log cabin up on the knoll, Palais Royale. So that camp was owned by a fella from Vermont named Harris Soule, and he was the county ag agent over in Vermont, and he had Palais Royale. And when my father was the game warden there, Mr. Soule used to hire Camille all the time, and he'd guide him either deer hunting or trout fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Soule fished. He'd hang out with Earl Weymouth. They'd go troll Ross Lake and fish all the streams and rivers, because every brook back then had trout.
Full of
full of.
And
bird
still
hunting
is,
is
probably,
still is
but
fairly good.
Mr.
Fishing.
Soule wrote a book called Northwood's Tales and Unusual Recipes, and I have a copy of that one.
Really?
And
probably hard to find. I will look it up.
Yeah,
I will look
Northwood's Tales and Unusual
Soule. Is that how you spell it? Yeah.
Soule.
Yeah.
Harris W. Soule.
Yeah, I will look that up because
it's a good book. A lot of they're just little stories, 1 or 2 page stories. Yeah. There are some stories in there that tell some history and some stuff over in Canada across the border, and a lot of very strange recipes.
Yeah,
some really good ones, but some odd ones. Roast raccoon and.
Yeah, I'm sure some odd animals there.
Yeah.
But just really good stuff. And my father always said he was just a super nice man, Mr. Soule.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Should we close it out and we can talk a little bit more?
How long have we been going?
I don't know. You're the boss. I'm sorry, I've been rambling.
No, what I'll do,
you can't imagine.
I might make a 2-part series.
I was just thinking that, Paul. You could probably make a 2-part.
But I'll close it out and we'll tell more stories without cameras sitting in our face. And
we didn't really tell many hunting stories. There are a lot of
hunting stories. But the main thing is the hunting stories are good and we love them, but there's something just about deer camp.
I think what I would like to tell you guys though while we are recording is I want you both to know that my brother and I, you do not understand how much we appreciate what you talk about when you do your stuff here. Because, again, to go, what I'm leading back to is folks do not realize how lucky we are in this state.
No, you're right.
The Irving Corporation, IP, Great Northern, Seven Islands, all these different land owners and companies, and the little guys that own land in the North
Prentice
Maine
Carlisle.
Woods, Prentice and Carlisle,
Yeah.
all those companies, they are so good to us.
They are.
And we are so lucky, and
You can take it for granted really easy.
you can
and
take
I did
it for
for a
granted
long
very
time.
easily.
And
Paul.
I did as a young person. I never thought about that as a young person. But now, as you get older, you realize that's not the way it is, like you say, in most of the world.
You get that
No,
right.
it's not the way it
You
is.
And
go
you've
out
been
west, and if you don't have a lease somewhere to hunt on, you know, look at New York State. They do have the Adirondacks, but a lot of those guys have to go get a lease somewhere to hunt. And down in the southern part of the U.S., getting back to, we just don't know how fortunate we are because, like you said, a lot of folks are going to these other states and they got to pay $10,000 or $15,000 a year for a lease to have a place to sit and hunt.
Yeah. And it's not very
And
big.
we have millions of. If you filled your truck up and said, "We're going to cover some miles today," you could burn a tank of fuel.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. You get up to where you are, even where our camp is, Paul, all around. Anywhere I want to go.
Someone
I can
asked
go
me,
anywhere
they're
I
like,
want to go and hunt a bird or hunt a
they're like,
deer.
what zone were you getting those birds in? And I was kind of like, well, zone 3, zone 5, zone 4, a little bit of 4. And then I'm like, there's
Because
quite an area there that
because you can travel a
cover.
long way up, and we do.
Yeah.
We did want to. My brother and I wanted to share with you. We watch all the YouTube channels here in Maine. You know, we avidly watch you guys.
We appreciate it.
We watch
Yeah.
some Big Woods bucks. We watch, Maine Girl Outdoors. We watch, we watch Corey on Maine Woods.
Yeah, I'm
we watch,
subscribed to all those people you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So
we watch all those different channels and we like them, but you guys are really doing a very good job about talking about what it is to be a guy in Maine, a gal in Maine who has the opportunity that we have and our traditions and our heritage stuff.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I'm glad that resonates.
It does resonate. And you guys are doing a really, really good job at that. And my brother said it last night because we I was coming here today and I told him, I said, I'm nervous. I don't even know how this thing goes or how to do this, but we
should have brought him with you.
We watched the one about your hunting camp and how you got started. Yeah. And Jay's like, man, we are so parallel.
Yeah.
And isn't that odd that here's a family from Fort Fairfield, Maine, Aroostook County. We grew up on the coast.
Yeah.
And yet
very similar.
We all do it the same way.
It's amazing how deer hunting does that.
Yeah.
There's been a few other people that have reached out and not so similar to this, but just little commonalities with deer hunting. And you're thinking, like one guy, he had a picture of a wall tent with a pack and play. And I'm thinking, I can relate to that right now because I've got 3 young kids.
Yep.
He's still going to do it and dealing with pack and play and toys. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, there's people doing the same thing that I'm dealing with.
You see a lot of it now. Technology takes over. People have downriggers, and it's, gone are the days of the lead core line and the Dave Davis spoons.
Oh, I used to troll those all the time.
Yeah, that's what it was when I was a kid. Lead core and Dave Davis spoons. And
chasing togue.
Yeah, chasing togue.
Even in hunting realm and stuff like that, you see people starting to use like AR style guns and stuff. And I mean,
I'm not against that. I don't. If people, I am very pro firearm, but that's not me.
No, I
want a traditional.
I don't even
Maine,
want a synthetic gun.
I don't even want synthetic
wood,
stock, and
I want just a.
We do a little trail camera now, and the cellular cameras are a big thing, and I don't know, it can get and I think, and it's happened in other states that they're starting to outlaw those.
I sent you a picture of a buck that we call the chainsaw buck.
Yes, and
it's on the tailgate.
That's a big buck.
It's all the guys. That buck was over 200 pounds. And he's got big antlers, And that deer was killed by Bernie Tate, who was a buddy of ours who goes to camp with us. The story with that deer, again...
So out of your camp?
Out of our camp.
Okay, yeah.
Hunting a big ridge over there, and had been seeing some sign, set up one morning, and the buck came along, and he shot the deer, but he hit the deer really low.
Okay.
Broke a leg. Bernie tried to track the buck for a while and just couldn't stay with it. So he said, I'm backing out and I'm going to go get help, which was smart.
Right. Yeah.
Bernie went back to camp and got David Minkins, who was like, yes, let's go get this thing. They grabbed their 35s because now they're chasing a wounded deer and thinking it's going to be close quarters.
And there was snow.
There was a little bit of snow. They get on the deer. This starts in the morning, and they chase that buck all day.
Jeez.
4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, Lord.
They are miles, and I do mean miles, back into the woods when they finally...
And it's getting dark.
When they finally got the deer killed. And all of us had been out hunting, and we came back to camp, and I have to be clear, I don't know how somebody got word, but there was a note on the table at camp, we need help. So I was with my cousin Michael. We headed over there, and it is dark now.
Yeah.
And Michael said, I've got a grid. And so we plugged it into the GPS, and we start through the woods. And we hike, and we hike. And like you just said, Paul, we went through a blowdown tangle. I don't even know how we got through that.
Yeah, hands and knees.
I mean, we were crawling over
down
down spruce trees and firs and under, and it was a fiasco. By the time we got there, the whole camp had shown up to help. We got to the buck. He was a big deer. We took turns dragging. At 1 o'clock in the morning, we stopped dragging, and we said, we're hanging this deer up.
Holy smokes.
We hung it up in a tree and hiked back out, went back to camp, got up the next morning. We brought chainsaws and hiked back in on the waypoint, got the deer out of the tree, and then had 2 guys in front clearing
away for
clearing away. And we dragged that buck back out to the truck and took that picture on the tailgate after we were done.
You guys must have been tired.
We were tired.
I remember a story like that, Paul.
Well, 1 second, though. How was dinner at camp that night?
The night before,
breakfast.
No one ate. But the night after we got the deer out of the woods, everybody ate good.
There was, and I don't know if you were at the camp at this because you were in and out having school and playing sports and stuff, but I remember Kevin had wounded a deer.
Oh, Tyrone, they named it.
And he and Derek tracked it all day.
Yeah.
And they get back at the camp that night. Their orange was brown. Their orange vests were brown.
I know exactly what you mean.
They had spruce needles. Their underwear was full of spruce needles.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Their clothes were tattered in one day. I don't know how far, but when they walked into camp, they looked like they had been beat up. They didn't get that deer.
They called it Hurricane Alley, right?
Yeah, but I just remember, and he did get a deer. That was the year I think we all shot deer, and Kevin did get one the last Saturday. But that day, Derek was with them. Derek tracked with them. And they come back to camp, and I remember, I can see them coming in their blaze orange hat and their vests were, I don't know if they were even serviceable, if they were legal anymore.
It was camo at that point.
They were so dirty, and the spruce needles, the dead spruce needles. It was.
I can feel that right now, right in my shirt collar.
Oh,
they wounded that. Kevin wounded the buck, and they tracked that all day.
I remember the story. They called it Tyrone because it was a big buck.
Yeah.
And they were like, he was walking. There were so many blowdowns. They called it Hurricane Alley because it was, I think, mature forest.
Yeah.
That had a lot of big.
Yeah.
And he said the buck was literally walking on blowdowns.
Yeah.
Going through this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was,
we actually have had a few of those stories. You know, that's the other thing I love about the guys I go with. They truly do. We don't like wounding animals.
No.
None of us do.
No.
We want a good, clean
No,
kill.
it happens
we want it,
occasionally.
right,
But,
and it does. But
yeah.
I was hunting with my cousin David one time, and we had fresh snow, and the snow had just stopped. And for some reason up there where we are, a lot of times, and this was back when there was some deer around, the deer would just come out of the woodwork. They got that fresh snow, and they get all frisky. And anyway, we were coming down this side road and looked up, and there was a spike horn there. And David said, "Get out and shoot that spike horn." And I said, "I can't get out of the truck. The deer's going to run off." He said, "I can't get out. It's on my side. Get out and shoot that spike horn." So I slid out of my side of the truck because we were headed, but the deer was there. Anyway, I slid out, crept around the front of my truck, and I missed the buck. David was wild because he wanted deer. You know, we'd been hunting for a while. Nobody had tagged anything yet.
Opportunities come few and far between. Said,
"You track that buck." He said, "I'm taking the truck and I'm going back in here. Get on that deer." So I said, "Okay." Loaded my gun up, went up over the hill, and I started following the track. And anyway, hadn't gone in there 80 yards, and fresh buck track came across the trail that was a lot bigger than the spike horn I'd just missed. So I turned and started following that track. That deer went down across the reality road. So I went down, and sure enough, got down, and it dropped off, and there were some jack firs down there that were probably 5-6 feet tall. Yep. And I could see the buck coming sideways, and he turned and started walking away from me, and I had my 270, and I put it right on the back of his neck and fired, and the deer took off. Yeah. And I said, "Holy cow." So I ran down through the jack firs, and I didn't know it, but on the other side of the jack firs, there was a drop off, and I hit that, went down. I'm laying on my back against the bank, and I look to my left, and here's the buck. And so right from the bank, I put it on him, and I fired, and that deer humped up, you know. And I said, "Holy cow, I got him." And he started making his way to the right up there in the woods. I could still see him, and he was not going fast. So I stepped into the stream, and I started to wade across, and I stepped on something and rolled my ankle. Oh. And I mean rolled my ankle bad. And because every guy at camp will say that I'm lying, that I wasn't hurt at all. But
you know you were hurt.
I didn't dare to try and get all the way across the stream. So I dragged myself back up the road, got up to my truck, and went back in to get David. We came out, and I pulled out, and a log truck almost, hit us. Yep. And anyway, we went back down in, and David is now fired up. He's like, "Okay, tell me where you were. What'd you see? Where'd you shoot?" He's fired up. So we go down to the edge of the stream, and he said, "Okay, we're going to go across. We're going to track this deer and get him." And I said, "I don't think he went very far, David." And I said, "I don't know if I can make it across there." I said, "My ankle, I can feel it swelling right now inside my boot." Yeah. And he said, "We're going to do this." So we started across, and David had no problem. He waded across the stream, and then I came along slowly, and he got up in there, and he didn't go 10 yards. He said, "Come on, John, your deer's right here. Come get it. You got to come finish this buck." I said, "Menktons, finish the deer. Finish the buck." I said, I can't move fast. So he killed the deer, finished it. The deer couldn't get up. And a nice 8-point buck. And he field dressed it. And the story that David used to love to tell, because again, we've lost David. We lost him in 2018. But David said, he said, "I got back to the edge of the river, and he said, I had John Wesley on one shoulder, and I had that deer across the other, and both rifles strapped across me." And he said, "I had to wade the river. It was right to my armpits in depth, And everybody at camp was just rolling. Yeah. And anyway, they all said that, I had no problem getting up and getting a beer, so my foot wasn't too bad.
Wasn't that bad.
Right.
Well, that was medication.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That was medication.
That's right. But we've done that a few times, and the same thing happened to my brother. He shot a buck, shot it in the morning, and he and Wilfred started tracking that deer, and Wid, and there was quite a bit of snow. And Wid is a big boy. Wid's a lot bigger than I am. And by the time they made it, chasing this deer, going round and round, they got down to the edge of the river, and the buck would go down the riverbank, which we're talking 70, 80 feet high
Holy
bank.
smokes.
The buck would run down and then run back up, and then run down and run back up. And they were following this thing verbatim. And Wid was physically done and was chafed raw, you know, from walking through deep snow and underbrush that you can't see.
Yeah.
And Wid said, I'm going to go back to the truck and get help. So Jay and Modine, I think Modine was with them. Jay and Modine came out and looked across. The deer was stepping out of the river, and Jay had hit the deer back.
Yeah.
That's why the deer was still up.
Okay.
And Modine said, don't shoot that thing in the river. And the deer took 2 more steps, and Jay whistled it, and it dropped right there on the bank.
On the
and then they're
bank.
like, how are we going to get this buck? So they took a waypoint trying to line up where they were with the deer, and then hiked back out, got in their trucks, and drive down there as far as they could, then get out and hike to get as close as they could to that waypoint coming out on the river, and then they found the deer.
Yeah.
They didn't get back until 1 or 2 o'clock in the
That was a
morning.
good night.
But anyway, I know I've rambled on forever here.
No,
and I
my
apologize,
God.
but
Oh,
I just wanted to again reiterate with you that, you know, it is impressive what you two are doing, the things you talk about. I'm not trying to get into politics. Like, that was incredibly interesting to me, what you pointed out about the schools not being able to do hunter education.
They're trying to pull.
Like, you know, that bothers me.
And that's how I look back. That was
'Cause when
my
I was
only
a kid,
access.
I didn't have to have hunter
No, I
education.
didn't
I was
either.
grandfathered.
Yeah,
But I
was
did go to a course.
Yeah.
Just because, and I don't think I ever sent my stuff in because I didn't need it.
Yeah.
But it was held at the high school.
Yeah. And I can
now,
remember,
if they can't do that, I think that's wrong.
like, after soccer practice, we'd go in and there was a whole bunch of us, all the kids that hunted. We were getting close to 16. We're like, oh my gosh, we can get this done so we can. And yeah, school provided it. It was a couple guys from the VFW
Yeah.
that actually put it on.
Yeah.
And it made it so easy. I think it was like 3 nights or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, to pull something that doesn't even make sense because you're first pulling knowledge from somebody, even if they never hunt.
Well, it's gun safety. That's what it's all about.
Gun
It's-
safety and woodsmanship.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
a little bit of, gosh, if you get lost.
Yeah.
It isn't teaching them how to be dangerous
No.
or
Yeah.
whatever the thought process was
Yeah.
behind that law. But yeah, you guys do a great job, and we just wanted you to know we really do appreciate that you're talking about those things and you're representing the Maine sportsmen and women in a very, very good way.
Yeah, we
So,
appreciate that.
it's awesome. All of you do. Like I said, Maine Girl Outdoors, both the Osgoods, Hal Blood, his crew, his whole crew, Corey Ryder, and I'm forgetting some, but there are a bunch of them that are doing what you're doing, and you guys do a good job.
I think it's important because it can be lost in, well, it's going to become a lost art, hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
And you hate to, if you can just get one person interested in it, I guess you've done something.
Yeah.
I agree.
Positively.
And the other thing that I wanted to compliment you both on is that you really wave the flag about it. It is sportsmen and women that do more for our wildlife than anyone else. Pittman Robertson Act.
Yes. Yeah.
Things like that, where we are putting more money back into our taking care of our fish and our game.
Yeah.
And all other species too.
If you think of
wildlife.
If you think of a scenario in your head of like no one hunting and fishing, what would happen to wildlife?
Yeah.
And then you look at the jobs lost, whether it's game wardens, biologists, all
Outfitters.
these outfitters,
Yeah. Guides and
like
Stores,
gosh,
restaurants,
yeah,
hotels, motels.
gas stations.
You know, it would be such a trickle down.
Yep.
insane.
Dean's Motor Lodge there in Portage.
Remember back in the
20
day?
years ago?
Oh, yeah.
That place would be jammed,
Oh,
Yeah.
packed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Out of staters.
Yep. I'm bummed out because when we were young going to camp, that was part of the plan. We always drove up, went to Patton. After the Canadian border thing changed, we always went in through 6 Mile.
Okay.
But we would go to Patton. We'd stop at Ellis's Family Market.
Yeah.
Get whatever odds and ends we need for groceries. Buy our milk there. We'd buy 8 or 10 gallons of Holton Farms dairy.
Yeah.
Ice, whatever.
Mm.
Then we'd go to Ashland and go to a restaurant and have breakfast before we went in the woods.
Yeah.
I can't find a restaurant in Ashland anymore.
There now is the old Post Cafe.
Office.
Is now a restaurant?
Yeah, right beside Ashland One Stop.
We did it going up fishing.
Yeah.
When the deer got wiped out, it has been very, very slow for them to come back.
Well, I believe that, and they call that, they fell into what they call a predator pit, and coyotes drive that. When the population's high, predators can take and still maintain a population, but when it gets low, the predator's still taking them, but to the extent that they can't get a foothold, and coyotes are still killing them, that they can't seem to, they call it a predator pit, they can't seem to get out of that pit.
Yeah.
It dropped down so low, and you can look up the phrase there, that they just can't climb out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. See, that's another thing. When I was young, there was no coyotes when I was young.
There were not.
No,
there were no coyotes up there when, I mean, I'm sure there were some coyotes, but you didn't see them.
Yeah.
Now you see coyotes, and the levels of everything have changed.
Yeah.
The lynx now are very thick.
We
don't see a lot of rabbits, but you can easily see lynx.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing, the fur bearers are easy to see the fluctuation with fur bearers. Last year, I filmed a beautiful fisher while we were deer hunting.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since we've seen some fisher.
Yeah.
Last year, we saw a bunch of fisher.
Yeah.
I saw a fair amount last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling Paul we were bird hunting. I saw 2 lynx within the last few weeks.
Yeah. See
2
lynx
different places.
like
2
crazy
lynx.
now.
I've seen a lot of lynx up here over the last few years, so there are a lot of lynx and stuff.
Yeah.
And they
I don't see
primarily-
bobcat.
No,
but I do
bobcats
see
are,
lynx.
are fairly rare up here now. I think the lynx have maybe had an effect on them.
Driven them out.
Yeah, but and the lynx are a big player in the hare population. That's what they mainly feed on is snowshoe hare. So,
but anyway, I apologize for rambling
No,
so
my
long.
God.
I just wanted you guys to know that we really do appreciate what you're doing. You do a great job at it, and I'm honored, and I thank you for having me.
Oh,
John,
it's
thanks
been
for
a pleasure.
coming. It's been a lot of fun.
Very interesting.
Love talking deer hunting, and we'll probably split this into a 2-part series.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably put them both out this week.
Yeah.
And it's been really good.
Yeah.
Somebody that shares the same and the same. They look at it the same way. It's not. There's way more than just going deer hunting.
Yeah.
The whole thing is way bigger than going out deer hunting.
It is.
That's part of it, but it's just a small part of it.
And I think we pretty much covered it all. Deer camp, deer stories, a little bit of fishing, a little bit of nature, a little bit of science.
Yeah.
So we got deer season starting Saturday for residents.
Yeah.
I think everyone's.
Boy, didn't the year go by fast?
Oh my
Paul.
word! And this deer season will go by fast. So
we look forward to it and
savor it.
Yeah, and here it is. It'll be gone.
I was just down in Lincoln at Whitney Outfitters. Walked through. I always am looking for a gun. You never know what you can't do without.
Yes.
They've already tagged 20 deer.
No kidding from Youth Day?
And the Youth Day was 14 of them.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Another thing that I was surprised by, Youth Day was a 2-day hunt.
It was a 2-day
Started
hunt.
on Friday, the 20th, and Saturday, the 21st. Yeah. Someone had posted some pictures on Friday, and I was going, well, gosh, this must be from last year. And then I looked it up. Yeah, Youth Day opened on Friday, so it was a 2-day Youth Day hunt. So,
well, I hope that's a sign of good things.
I hope so.
I hope those young people are having a good time and
get some hunters hooked.
Yeah.
So good luck to everyone this coming Saturday or next Saturday, and hopefully it's going to be a productive year. So, John, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We had
for
a blast.
It's been a great time.
Good stories.
It's been an honor to meet you guys.
This was a good time for sure. So until next time, get outside.
It's good for the soul.
See ya.